I can't hear Dr. Rana.
We are all set. Yeah, the YouTube live streaming is on. We are live now on YouTube. We are also live on the Zoom. We are letting in participants now. Professor Yogesh, you can tell us when we can start. We are all set. We can start. It's 5:30 in India now. Once you give a go ahead, we can start. We'll have to just see if the first speaker has come in. We'll wait for it and then we can start. Professor Sandeep, you are live. You can possibly start once we get a go ahead from Professor Yogesh.
Yeah, I guess let's just wait for a few more minutes, 2-3 more minutes, just few other speakers joins and then we can begin.
Yeah.
All right.
So I guess it will be difficult to. Oh, Dr. Rana has joined now, Professor Rana. So one more.
Yeah, Professor Rana is there. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, and I think I saw someone else as well. Just Laurie just joined. So welcome, Laurie.
Hello, this is Mohammed.
And Annabelle is here, Ajay is here. So I think we have now quite few of us is already here, I believe. So someone else as well. Just Laurie just joined.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, good afternoon, Dr. Shengupta. Good afternoon, Mohammed.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Hello, this is Mohammed.
Hi, good afternoon, Mohammed.
Here, Ajay is here. So I think we have now quite few of us is already here, I believe. So someone else as well. Just Laurie just joined.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hey, good afternoon, Dr. Shengupta. Good afternoon, Mohammed.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Hello, this is Mohammed.
Hi, good afternoon, Mohammed. The audio seems to be playing again.
Yeah. Is some problem?
Yeah, now I think it stopped.
Okay.
We'll have to request all to be on the mute mode and only unmute when we'll have to speak. So that will ensure that things are perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Professor Bhattacharya, I think we can begin now.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you for the green signal. All right. So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and my dear students, a very good afternoon to all of you who've joined in from UK, Europe. A very good evening to our guests from India, Australia, New Zealand, and a very good morning to our friends who've joined from the US and Canada. Welcome to our international webinar on setting the future of digital and social media marketing research, perspectives, and research propositions, hosted jointly by Swansea University and SIBM Pune. My name is Sandeep Bhattacharya, and I shall be your host for this webinar. This webinar is actually the direct result of a brilliant article on the same topic, authored by our gracious co-host, Professor Yogesh Dwivedi, and his co-authors, most of whom will be speaking today. And allow me a few seconds to post the link of that article on the chat box. And meanwhile, a gentle request to all of our student participants to please switch off your camera feeds and also stay on mute. So I'm just looking for the chat box now. Chat. There we go. I have just posted, Professor Yogesh, the link to the article so that for anyone who is interested, they can actually refer to and read that article. We have, I think, already almost 300 participants on Zoom, attending via Zoom, and there are hundreds more who are attending via the YouTube streaming link. The session is being recorded, and the recording of the session will be shared with international media within a couple of days. The current COVID situation has actually sharply accelerated the need for both digital and social media. In fact, It has become much needed, and in some cases, possibly it is the only lifeline for people. So it kind of sharply illustrates how useful and how important this webinar can be. All in all, I think we have a very interesting session ahead of us. Please allow me to share with you the flow of the event. So first, we shall hear from our distinguished co-hosts, Professor Yogesh Dwivedi, who is the co-director of research at the School of Management at Swansea University, UK. We shall also hear from Dr. R. Raman, Director SIBM Pune and Dean, Faculty of Management, Symbiosis International University. Immediately after that, we shall go to our eminent speakers. And you know, in normal webinars, we have possibly 2 or 3 speakers. We are lucky to have 13 distinguished speakers with us. And let me share with you the names of the speakers who we shall hear from today. So we shall hear from Dr. Annabel Gutierrez, Senior Lecturer in Digital Marketing, University of Kent, UK. Dr. Jenna Jacobson, Assistant Professor of Retail Management, Ryerson University, Toronto, Canada. Professor Varsha Jain, Professor of Integrated Marketing Communication, MICA, India. Dr. Brendan James Keegan, Senior Lecturer in Digital Marketing, Manchester Metropolitan University, UK. Professor Hajar Kefi, Professor of MIS and Digital Marketing, Paris School of Business, France. Dr. Hatis Kisgin, Senior Lecturer and Associate Dean, University of Bradford, UK. Dr. Anjala Krishan, Professor of Marketing and Director of MBA Programs, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, USA. Dr. Emmanuel Mogaji, Lecturer in Advertising and Marketing Communications, University of Greenwich, UK. Dr. Muhammad Rahman, Associate Director of Marketing, Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania, USA. Professor Nipendra Rana, Professor in Digital Marketing, University of Bradford, UK. Dr. Shonchayon Shengupto, Assistant Professor of Marketing, ESCA School of Management, France. Dr. Tek Ming Tan, Assistant Professor of Marketing, Oulu Business School, University of Oulu, Finland. And Dr. Laurie Hughes, Lecturer in Strategic Operations, School of Management, Swansea University, UK. So that is the distinguished list of speakers in the order in which they will speak. So each speaker will have 7 minutes to speak. And please forgive me if I become a pest after 6 minutes, requesting you to wind up. So for each speaker, I shall announce your name and request you to speak. The other speakers, I would request to stay on mute and also switch off their camera feeds just to conserve the bandwidth. And when you speak, I would request you to share your screen and your presentation. The chat window will be disabled during the speeches, but will be opened up after that for the question and answer session. And I shall share the questions with our distinguished speakers, our co-hosts, and then we'll have the Q&A session after everyone finishes speaking. And of course, we shall end the webinar with a brief vote of thanks. This entire event is being coordinated and managed by the IT team of SIBM Pune. And a gentle disclaimer, whilst we have a very robust IT infrastructure, if still there is a glitch, please bear with us for a few minutes and we shall be back live. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to invite Professor Yogesh Dwivedi for his welcome address. Professor Yogesh Dwivedi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Bhattacharya. Very detailed and comprehensive introduction of event and of the speakers. So thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Yogesh Dwivedi, a professor of digital and social media marketing at the School of Management, Swansea University. And as Professor Bhattacharya mentioned, I'm one of the co-chair of the webinar. And I'll talk about a little bit of why we decided to organize it. I wouldn't take too long because I want speakers actually to have maximum opportunity to talk about things that we are here today. So Firstly, I'm delighted to welcome you all in this international webinar that is jointly organized by SIBM Pune, India, and the School of Management, Swansea University, Wales, UK. And the webinar, as Professor Bhattacharya said, webinar is based on an opinion article on digital and social media marketing, which is recently published in International Journal of Information Management. The article is slightly different from other research articles in the sense that it has multiple authors from different countries, specializing in different aspects of digital and social media marketing, which includes artificial intelligence, augmented reality, B2B marketing, mobile marketing and advertising, ethical issues related to marketing, and ethical issues related to digital and social media marketing, as well as in general social media marketing per se. So you can see the width of kind of focus of this event is very wide and covers so many different things. And majority of authors of article have joined today actually to discuss the aspect that they have discussed in the article. And hopefully we have also a few other speakers who is not part of the article, but they kindly joined us to share their thoughts about the area and about the topic. So thank you very much, Tech, Brendan, and Annabelle. And if I'm sorry if I'm missing anyone else. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, apart from, as I said, I don't want to take too long. So I just want to say a big thank you to my co-author who actually contributed to the article, as well as all the speakers who are here today with us. Without you, this would not have been possible. And also, obviously, as you can see, the effort required to organize such an event. So my big thank you also goes to SIBM Pune for such a great coordination for bringing too many speakers and great audience actually together. So thank you SIBM Pune for all your effort. And also Digital Marketing and Analytics SIG of UK Academy of Marketing has also supported this event along with the International Journal of Information Management. And my thank you goes to both as well for this. And finally, thank you to everyone in the audience who has joined us today. And I just hope that this event would be interesting and useful to all of us. And with that, without further ado, I will now pass it over to my co-chair, Professor Raman, for his opening remarks. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's hope for an enjoyable event. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Yogesh. That was very kind of you. In fact, a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening to all those who have joined this webinar from several parts of the world. In fact, about 15, 16 countries and more than 500 people who are there, who are actually live viewing this webinar, right, on this platform as well as on the YouTube platform where the live streaming is currently happening. At the onset, let me welcome all of you to this webinar, which is the title, where the title is Setting the Future of Digital and Social Media Marketing Research, Perspectives and Research Proposition. First and foremost, I must thank Professor Yogesh Dwivedi and also Swansea University for giving SIBM Pune and Symbiosis International Deemed University an opportunity to host this webinar jointly with Swansea University. We all know that internet and social media has changed consumer behavior leaps and bounds. And the way consumers behave online and things are sold online is also changing very fast. Social and digital media marketing also offers a lot of opportunities for organizations to lower their cost and reach as well. But there are other problems that are always there with this kind of zero channel marketing that people call. In this international webinar, which aims to bring together collective insights from several leading experts on the issues related to digital and social media marketing, we have in total about 16 speakers who are going to speak on this in this webinar. The experts' perspective, which are basically drawn from the arguments and discussions presented in a recent article by Professor Yogesh Dwivedi et al. 2020, which will offer a detailed narrative on the key aspects of this important topic, as well as perspectives on more specific issues, including artificial intelligence, augmented reality, reality marketing, digital content management, mobile marketing, and many other topics, and the ethical issues therein. This webinar would offer insights both from researchers as well as practitioners' perspective. In fact, some of the CXOs, the CEO of Spencer's has also joined. He is our alum. He wanted to know more, so he has also joined this webinar. Welcome to Devendra Chawla, who has just joined us now. So this webinar would offer insights to both researchers and practitioners in the form of challenges and opportunities that will be also highlight the limitations within the current research and the research gaps. So I'm sure this webinar is going to be a knowledge feast to all the participants who have joined now. With no further ado, I would now request Professor Sandeep to invite the speakers to deliver their address one after another. I'm sure it's going to be an enthralling session for each one of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. Always a pleasure to hear you speak. May I now request Dr. Annabel Gutierrez, Senior Lecturer in Digital Marketing, University of Kent, UK, to please come online and present her thoughts. Dr. Annabel.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to share the presentation with everybody to start with. And
Dr. Annabel, we have 7 minutes for you.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me just...
We can see your presentation.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it went off. We can now see you.
No, it goes here, no problem. Okay. I can see you have people in your waiting room. That's what I got a little bit distracted. So maybe you want to let people in.
Sure.
And meanwhile, I'm going to start my presentation. So thank you very much for having me today. And today I want to start by just considering some of the aspects that we are facing with social media. We talk a lot about the influence of social media in our somebody's playing with their drawing. Okay, so with the development of big data, and this big data is being created not only from organizations, but mainly from consumers. And you can see in this diagram how many of this big data is created in social media. So we can easily perceive how this is changing the environment and the way we interact, not only with individuals, with brands, but also with government. So social media has a big influence on this. And I want to use an example. Yes.
Dr. Annabel, if you would like to put your screen into the slide view mode, I think then it would become bigger and it would change as your slides change.
Okay, thank you for letting me know that. So it is coming. I guess you are seeing my small, okay.
Yeah, it's at the bottom on your right-hand side, the slide viewer icon, right at the bottom, next to the percentages of the screen.
Yeah, this slide. Oh. Yes, because I have here. That must be a better view now. Is that better?
Yes, yes, yes. We can see your entire slide now. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's fine. So as I was telling you, yes, I'm gonna use this example to illustrate a little bit how important is not only social media, but everything that we are doing around data to deliver a compelling experience for customers. So in the food industry, you may have your website that is offering you an artificial intelligence algorithm to personalize your nutrition. So they ask you for personal data as age, weight, height, and this is very good. You get a good personalize a nutrition plan with this. But you can also think of integrating data that is being collected, for example, on your Fitbit. So instead of using estimate data from users' perspective, we can collect this in a more accurate way from devices that people are using. And what is more, you can join a service, and your service can be using data from another company that has a DNA food sensitivity test that allows you to know which products are best for your diet. So when you have all this type of integration, everything gets very exciting because you can see the possibilities, the convenience, and the personalization that you can offer to your consumers. But at the same time, it is becoming a little bit concerning because you are sharing some of the most personal information with all these organizations. So what could be more personal than your DNA? So with that, it comes the issue that has been well expressed and is a common proposition and contribution in the paper that we've been mentioning before, that is around personalization privacy paradox. And this paradox is not only from individual perspectives about, I want personalization, but I don't want to share my data. You cannot have that personalization without sharing data. But that paradox comes as well for businesses who want to provide that personalization without being seen as very intruding to individuals, or with governments. When we are sharing data with government, it is also very important to know how they are using this data and how concerned we are. With all this issue with COVID that we've been facing in the few past months, it is evident that people care a lot about their privacy. And even with this situation in which you think that the big major well-being of everybody should be enough for give up your privacy, it has seen that it's not that easy. And not in everywhere you can implement solutions that are taking your privacy in the solutions. Additionally, in this paradox, you have that everybody is expressing higher concern about the online privacy risk. However, in practice, there is a lot of evidence that people are sharing. People are really disclosing more than they think they are. And the example I gave you before, your DNA, that is the most personal data. 1 minute?
That's right, Dr.
Yes, I'm about to finish.
Thank you.
So, DNA is your most personal information, and yet you share that with many commercial databases, and even you do it not only for health issues, but weight loss, or even to get a pair of socks with your DNA pattern. So if we are having that situation, we need to start redefining privacy, considering not only consumers' perspective, but also cultural and international situations, because not everywhere there are data protection regulations. These principles guide you on what it could be the discussion organizations should have in order to ensure that the use of social media is well used and integrated with the other channels. And I want to finish then with some aspects. This digital marketing environment is growing. Now we have so many solutions that are going to be integrated with social media. So our responsibility and further research should be on mindful consumption and helping brands to understand the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All of these always using data from website, from social, from proprietary data, open data, taking care of the data protection regulations, but more importantly, with having the data ethics before you start a solution or before you start proposing any solution to the market. Cultivating engagement and well-being is very important. And finally, to make sure that we use emerging technologies for marketing in an inclusive way that allows all types of consumers to have a better experience. So with that, I finish my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Annabelle, for those wonderful insights. And what could be more personal than your own DNA? Thank you so much. Let me now invite our next speaker for the session, Dr. Jenna Jacobson. Dr. Jenna Jacobson is Assistant Professor of Retail Management at Ryerson University, Toronto, Canada. Over to you, Dr. Jenna Jacobson.
Great, thank you for the introduction. Social media is a rich source of data that can be used to understand our behavior. In reality, we don't really understand how our social media data can or is being used. One strand of my research has focused on the privacy and ethics in considering our social media data as well as other digital data. As we know, our data can be shared, sold, combined with other data to really reveal additional information about us. And social media marketers have the ability to use the public's social media data to derive tangible insights. Micro-targeting on social media platforms has resulted in what has been called weaponized ad technology. And this allows marketers to target based on demographics, interests, and other types of personal data. And this raises the question, just because we can do something with social media, does it mean we should? And I added an important little asterisk here. And this asterisk serves as a critical reminder to anyone who's using social media data to deeply consider the ethics of these practices. Right now, there are greater opportunities to harness increasing amounts of data, as well as sensitive data, which can be used in social media marketing. Right now, there are questions about what type of social media data is being collected, how is it being used, who is using it, and for what purposes. And these questions are more important now than ever before. In a previous study, we analyzed Canadian social media users' privacy perceptions of their public social media data. And by public, we refer to data that is set on a public privacy setting. We wanted to understand people's comfort and identify the differences based on who uses the data, such as academic researchers, marketers, employers, and so forth. Why the data was being used, like a credit check or an insurance claim, and what data, because not all social media data is equal. We have posts, we have locations, we have friends lists, we have sentiment data. So participants were asked, how comfortable would you be if one of the following entities accessed information about you publicly on social media? And what we found is that people are most uncomfortable with marketers using their data. As you can see here, 66% of our participants were uncomfortable with marketers using their public social media data. What this means is that using the simple privacy setting on individuals' social media accounts really does not suffice in assessing what data that marketers should really be ethically using. Social media marketers are data consumers, and data consumers are those who are scraping and analyzing and using the public's data. And these data consumers really need a high level of literacy in order to understand the ethics and practices of social media. The regulation of social media marketing will inevitably come from both inside and outside the industry, as it has done in various other spaces before. But this often lags behind the technological advancements that we see in practice. And this points to the need for continued research in this area to really understand what influences people's perceptions and their behavior surrounding the use of their own social media data. In another paper co-authored with Dr. Cruz and Hernandez Garcia, we introduce a new construct, and this is we call marketing comfort, which refers to an individual's comfort with the use of information posted publicly on social media for three purposes: targeted advertisement, customer relations, and opinion mining. And we hope that this construct can be employed by future researchers. Because individuals do not fully understand how their data is currently being used, and perhaps even more problematically, we don't understand how our data can be used in the future. So we need interdisciplinary and intersectional perspectives to develop best practices that afford every person the ability to develop the skills they need to navigate the digital world. And this brings us to 2 points about digital literacy and data transparency. First, the public's comfort with social media marketing may be affected by data literacy. So we really need a lifelong commitment that is reinforced by various stakeholders. Second, as we gain more data literacy, as the public learns more about their social media data and how it can be used, there may be increased pressure on social media marketers to engage in more transparent and ethical data practices. So this social media transparency is going to play an increasingly important role in ethical organizational practices. And my hope is that ethics is not a standalone topic, but rather it's embedded into the everyday practices of working with social media data. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenna. And you finished on time. That's wonderful. Very, very important subject. And like you rightly mentioned, it needs to be embedded. And there was a very nice word you used in your slide, marketing comfort. And I think that casts a message to all. And I'm sure your students go away with a lot more retention because the visual appeal of your slides was absolutely stunning. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenna. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Professor Varsha Jain. She's Professor of Integrated Marketing Communication at MICA, which was formerly the Mudra Institute of Communications, located in Ahmedabad, India. Professor Varsha, are you online?
Hello, everyone. Yeah.
Great.
I'm there. Thank you.
Great. Welcome, Professor Varsha. And if you can go ahead and share your slide deck. And Professor Jenna, if I could request you to stop sharing your slide deck. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much for inviting me and being part of this wonderful webinar, as well as for being part of this outstanding paper. I would
Professor Varsha, we can't see your slide deck as yet. You need to share your screen.
Yeah, so I will do that right away.
Great. You can just put it into slide viewer, and I think we are good to go.
Yes, so thank you so much thank you. So thank you so much for inviting me. A warm welcome to everybody. I'm really grateful to everyone here, all my co-authors and the organizing team. They have done an outstanding work, I think. This is the best way of using the social media and digital platform. So we can see the live execution here, which is really very exciting. With that, I would like to take up from what Professor Jana was just mentioning about the marketing comfort. And she also mentioned about the advertising aspect while she was discussing about that particular construct. So given that platform, and I think coming from India, all the more it becomes important because our first ring is mobile phone. And that is something which is even ahead of television, surprisingly, because in one of the study which we have done earlier, we found that television is just a backend that goes on. And mobile phone is something which people are aiming for. So with that orientation, let us just understand what's happening in mobile advertising space and how we can build upon it. So primarily, if you see mobile shoppers, if you look at the figures, probably you would understand what I'm talking about, that 45% of the shopping is actually been done, compare the pricing and everything on mobile phones. And they access the internet as well on this. So that's why it's very important to understand the attitudes of the consumers, what's happening, and how they are developing their attitudes towards this particular space. If you look at the devices, which is the smartphone has the highest penetration over here, and then comes the laptops and the tablet. And here I would like to also mention that Asian countries where people are multilingual, they are more probed towards using multiple gadgets, multiple screens at one shot. And there are some studies which we have done earlier. We found that this particular mindset actually helps them to do more multitasking as compared to an individual who has been using only one particular language. So with that, there's a lot of scope to understand mobile first consumers from this particular area. Now, if I look at the data, which is about the mobile phone spending, that is also going to exceed by $280 billion in the coming year. And then mobile devices, as I was saying, which also been increased for the paid clicks. And by 2021, the location targeted mobile ad spend is also going to increase phenomenally. So with that context, again, as you see, the Facebook advertising revenues will also come from the mobile phone. So that is something which is quite thought-provoking. And with that thought, let me introduce this model to all of you. So this is something which we have developed in this paper, which I think Yogesh has mentioned earlier, which is about the mobile advertising. If you see the stimuli, it's more about the location-based information. It's about the credibility. It's about, entertainment, because Generation Y, if I have to talk about the digital natives, they are probably more into entertainment and info entertainment. And they hate irritation from this advertising which they get. So another study which we have done, they get irritated when the ads are not aligned and contextual. This is what they are looking for. So basically they want the marketers to track the behavior, and based on their behavior and their mood, which is quite short-lived, they would like to see the advertisement. And the content has to be more personalized. And I think with another paper which we are doing, we found that AI can actually help us to personalize the content basis the requirement of the consumer. And with that, the processing of the information is also kind of a structure driven, because they process it with logic, but they also want some aesthetic appeal in it. And interestingly, this is found in various other studies also, which we have done, that the social influence is a moderator over there, especially because peers and especially friends, they have a key role to influence their information processing as well as the response. So if I look at the response as an outcome variable from the consumer side, and that's how it becomes a dyad model, which is the marketers and consumers aligned together, the response will be more interactive, involvement will be higher, and we will be able to change their attitude and their purchase intention. So with that, here are some of
Dr. Varsha, we are running short of time. If I could request you to kindly summarize.
I'll just take a minute. It's
sure.
just the
Thank
last
you so
one.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, so here are the aspects which I was mentioning about the type of advertising, content, which has to be personalized, and then the processing, which has to be a little logical, moderated by the social influence, and have a better user interface, which will help them to get a proper response in terms of the mobile advertising and turn them for the positive attitudes. And with that, I would just like to mention my last slide, which is about how it will help this particular format. in terms of the social influence, because it will help the society at large. And that is exactly what marketeers are aiming for, because sustainability is something which is really coming up in a big way. So for further details, this is the way, and this is the recent publication on digital natives if you want to refer more. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Varsha. And there was a very interesting tagline in your presentation which said, mobile first, customer mindset. Thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Sure.
We now move on to our, most welcome, ma'am. We now move on to our next speaker for our session, Dr. Brendan James Keegan, Senior Lecturer in Digital Marketing, Manchester Metropolitan University, UK. Dr. Brendan James Keegan, are you online?
I am indeed. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, we can.
Great. And screen sharing, I hope, is working.
Indeed, it is.
That's a thumbs up. That's lovely. That's fine. That's the international symbol, if that's okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. Not to repeat what practically everybody else will say today, but congratulations on an absolutely fantastic piece of research. I thought it was incredible, the manner in which all of these viewpoints were pulled together. So I think Yokesh and all the other co-authors deserve a pat on the back for doing something groundbreaking, something I believed was quite groundbreaking. Now, presumably the reason why I'm here today is because I sent this tweet, which is on the slide, a couple of weeks ago. So when I first came across the article, I thought, all right, this is quite interesting. And I know Yokesh, I know some of Yokesh's work. So I did, and I know the journal quite well. However, one of my co-authors also contributed to this article as well. So I had a kind of a prior knowledge that this was being done. But this essentially for me was like the coming together of some great minds to try and identify topics and pull together the future of what we need to consider. Now, my tweet refers to this article, Nailing It. Now, I thought that might be an interesting way just to kind of structure and to frame what I can speak to you about today. Now, from my perspective, I have been teaching digital marketing for nearly 11 years in Manchester Metropolitan University, particularly in the area of data and analytics and how that informs and supports decision making in the digital marketing process. So for my sins, I was a practice-based digital marketer. I was a spammer many years ago, and I got into academia slightly afterwards. So I have a wonderful view of the dark side and the light side. So I suppose from my perspective, the article itself, one of the main reasons why I think it nails it is because it captures the zeitgeist. Now, the zeitgeist is obviously this phrase which captures what the world is talking about, what people are talking about, what's going on in the world. So I thought it was a wonderful way of collecting together this big flotilla of all these different things that are going on, because us as educators and as students and as academics looking at this topic, it's difficult because you'll hear these phrases about digital revolution, it's changed things, it's changed human behavior. And that's correct, but it's changed human behavior in so many different facets. It's very difficult to get a view, an overarching overall view. The second reason why I believe this article is very useful is because it embraces this view from practice. Now, one of my bugbears over the years is that academic research largely tended to focus on the consumer perspective of digital and social media marketing, the outcomes of campaigns, interactions with campaigns, or and various other topics like that. However, a limited range of study, up until recently, of course, a limited range of study actually looked at the marketers who were doing that job and the practicalities of that, which was my old job many years ago. So I really appreciate that the practice view of digital and social media marketing has been embraced by this. Now, I wanted to share something with the group, if that's okay, but I have pardon me. As an example of this, I'm just going to put into the chat box a link to 2 articles which have greatly helped my interpretation of digital and social media marketing research from theoretical perspectives. Now, one is from Kate Lamberton and Andrew Stevens over at Oxford, and then the second one is a brilliant piece of research done by Professor Ngai. But they're essentially systematic literature reviews that look back through different phases and different approaches and different developments in digital and social research over the years. Now, while I appreciate these, I have published a systematic literature review many years ago on the agency-client relationships, and that was a difficult job, and I appreciate how difficult it is to try and gather together all this research and try and pull together clusters and ideas of themes, and I think that's something that this article does particularly well. The third reason why I think this article was great is because it provides me with a range of dissertation thesis topics for my students. My students are going to be very, very happy to read this article, and I'm going to direct a lot of my students to this article. And for any of the undergraduate and postgraduate students watching today, I would argue that you have the title of your future research right there on a table at the end of this article. So if you're looking for a topic to research or to discuss or to write about, you've got it right there. And arguably for academics, we have future discussions now to contribute to. Another thing I was quite impressed with was the broad range of academic perspectives. Now, I rarely even agree with my co-authors. So how Yogesh managed to get all of these people to agree to write something together, I do not know. So that deserves massive respect. And then I suppose finally, in terms of my research, something I'm looking at the moment is this notion of digital and place making. So how towns and cities use digital and social media data to try and enhance experiences, not necessarily from a tourism perspective, but from a kind of a localized community perspective. So you might have groups that might go and clean up litter in a specific place, but digital social media is a great channel to help to kind of gather together people to make a change, but also to try and help various societal issues that might be happening within towns. Now, that piece of research, sorry, phone buzzing, that piece of research does point very strongly towards the Sustainable Development Goals, as mentioned by my previous speaker. So one thing that I really liked about this article is that it did consider ethics and sustainability in terms of digital and social data and use of. And as Jenna has pointed out, that moving forward, future marketers need to bear this in mind because it's a different environment these days. It's no longer the spam friendly environment that I used to work in. We really need to be careful with how we use this data for people going forward. And you as future graduates, if you have that in mind, that's going to be a fantastic attribute to have for your person, but also for your CV. And then I suppose the final point is that I was particularly impressed with how negative implications and negative outcomes of digital and social media data use has been covered by this, because I think it's been a massive gap. It's a massive omission in digital and social research up until today. Not many people have considered the negative implications on us, upon our well-being, upon our psyche. Obviously, certain disciplines have covered this in relation to stress or within to teenage use of social media. But I think there's bigger implications here that haven't been spoken about. So I applaud all of the authors for contributing towards this part of the conversation. Slightly under 7 minutes, but that's my view. We'll have a further discussion later, I hope.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Brendan Keegan. And you not only nailed it, you did something you did something over and beyond that, which is very unusual in academia. You displayed a sharp and a keen sense of humor, which is rare in academia. And it is that one factor which can give a huge wow to anyone who's listening to you in your class. Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you for the invitation.
We now move on to our next speaker for our session, Professor Hajar Kefi, Professor of MIS and Digital Marketing, Paris School of Business, France.
I try to share.
We can see you at the moment. Yes, I think it's coming on. Yes, we have it. We have it. You're good to go, Professor Hajar. Bonsoir.
Okay, so I'm very, very pleased to be here, and thank you, Dr. Dwivedi, for inviting me to be part of this wonderful project. I'm really very, very happy to contribute to this article. Well, actually, I'm out of the office, so my slides are not very appealing. I kept them very simple. And I will just try to introduce my contribution, which is about crossing the dark side of social and digital marketing. and which means that I try to put some focus on, as many of my colleagues have developed just before my presentation, that there are negative impacts, negative effects of digital marketing, besides the light side, which is value co-creation, improved decision-making for consumers, and so on. So why not focusing and trying to address this dark side? So two perspectives are put forward in this article. A technology-oriented perspective, which means what's going on, what is wrong with technology. And for this, I have put a cover of an excellent book from Jacques Ellul, The Betrayal by Technology, which is, Jacques Ellul is a philosopher and someone very interesting in my career, actually, and how he addresses technology in human life. And the other perspective is more about users, and it is a user-oriented perspective about this double-sided marketing perspectives. The first one is about, as I said, technology, so it is about data and algorithmic issues. So as you know, we are living in the big data era, and many claim data is the new oil. But of course, it is absolutely necessary to a certain data validity and veracity before deriving any value from it. This is why it is important to try to depolluate this the data surrounding us and try to address bias in data. This bias is, of course, about fraud reviews, fake social media identities, fake news, etc. So in this area, metrics could be considered as at the same time the solution and also the problem, which means that data analytics is pushing many companies and many brands to do whatever possible in order to involve and have more clients engaged. But there are many side effects concerning this. These effects concern consumers, who are subject of massive clickbait related to inorganic, that is paid rather than earned, and fraudulent content. And also, it can also, from a marketing perspective, brands also have to be conscious of the fact that all these practices would also have some side effects for them, especially loss of visibility of their targeted audiences. So, well, actually, in computer science and management information systems, these topics are already addressed. But in marketing, there is a real gap in research in these areas. There are some works on e-worm, negative e-worm, and how they could be dysfunctional, about swaying effects, etc. But there is still need of research in these topics, and especially when we have talked about algorithms and algorithmic issues. So everybody knows what's an algorithm. It is working with artificial intelligence and so on, but they have some drawbacks. These are addressed in philosophy and also in ethical studies, but not once again sufficiently in marketing, because actually algorithms will have drawbacks because they could use biased data and they can also contribute to produce more bias. They can reinforce existing structures of control of power technology regimes as defined by the Michel Foucault, the French philosopher. And they can also produce consumers, of course, personalized product and information offering, but they can also produce what we call a filter bubble or an echo chamber. And Okay,
Dr. Hajar, if I could request you to...
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Almost finished.
Thank you so much.
This is why there are 4, certainly more suggested research areas. The first area of research about metrics, the second about invalid traffic identification, the third one about strategy-oriented studies, about the roles of regulatory institutions and any other ethical institution, and also about what we call algorithmic literacy. And I know that Jenna talked about data literacy, machine learning interpretability, and how they could enhance trust and build trust. The second research perspective is focused on people, on consumers. And you know, cyberpsychology has addressed many topics related to that, example, addiction, dependence, privacy concerns, cyberbullying. And we have also worked on this with some of my co-authors, like about exhibition, about regret, etc. And also to take into consideration both sides, what we call the Janus phase of IT. And in this case, some issues, research issues for I know that our young researchers connected today, talking and working on user dependence on technology and how they could have positive and also negative impacts on over-engagement, and also address user presence quality. User technology trend triangle, what I call it, the user technology brand triangle, and its dollars of paradoxical positioning, trust, privacy, authenticity, calculation, destruction, preservation, and also the cognitive and emotional user limitation, including emotional overload, and also preference construction schemas that include human and non-human influencers and prescribers. And finally, to conclude, these 2 perspectives are, of course, intimately related to each other, and they have to be considered closely together. Both are related to user technology interactions, and they, of course, need all sorts of research methodologies, not only quantitative, but qualitative, and certainly experimental protocols. And thank you very much for your attention. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Professor Hajar. And thank you for sharing your wonderful insights. It's so important to have a sense of balance, and very often the positives get celebrated, but the dark side is also important to look at so that we get that sense of balance.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So without further ado, if I can invite Dr. Hatis Keegan, Senior Lecturer and Associate Dean, University of Bradford, UK. Dr. Hatis, over to you. We can see your slide deck, we cannot see you.
Okay. Can you see me now or hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you clearly. We can see your slide deck. You're good to go.
Okay. There is, though, I will, where is it? Okay. Yes, sorry, apologies. Thank you very much, first of all, for organizing this event. I'm very grateful for Professor Yogesh to bring us all together. Wonderful to see so many participants and attendees and presenters. So thank you very much. I am Hatis Keegan. I'm a senior lecturer in marketing at the University of Bradford, and I'm also the Associate Dean of Learning and Teaching. Prior to Bradford, I was also in Swansea University, and I had the privilege to work very closely with Professor Yogesh and also with Professor Rana, who is currently also in Bradford, my direct colleague. So thank you very much. When I read the paper, I was actually amazed, and equally to what Brendan said, the contributions and the perspectives in this paper were really touching upon, as Brendan said, nailed it. So I fully agree with Brendan on that view. And when I look at the contributions, I see a communality in all the various areas which I picked out on this slide. Said by Angela, human to human. By Gina, it's about social network analysis. Jennifer mentions brand communities. Jamie is discussing customer segments. Mohammed is raising the issue of what are the metrics and what kind of scales should we use. And then Xishuang is discussing responsible AI, because AI is increasing, as we know. And unfortunately, you know, research still needs to further develop this area for us to comprehend what it really means from a customer point of view or consumer point of view. And then Varsha talks about social influence as a moderator, whereas Jenna discussed, and we heard in her presentation, ethical concerns. When I take all these contributions and these perspectives into account, it's all about the human, it's about the individual, though in a group setting. And the question is, what happens with them when we talk about social media marketing or even digital marketing? And the question I have is mainly, what about those individuals from their cultural point of view, and at the same time, what is happening to them in a group perspective? From my own research focus and research interest, consumer acculturation is something where almost all the contributions in this amazing paper touches upon. Race is discussed, ethnic identity is discussed, human-to-human interaction and how social ties actually influence our behavior online. So cultural diversity in terms of consumer acculturation, which mainly touches upon the fact that we have more than one culture, which is mainly the case with immigrants or migrants. So immigrants and migrants are mainly settled in a country which is not their heritage, but has become their home. So we are talking about a minimum of 2 cultures embedded in the identity. And the question arises, is there a difference, and how does it influence when we take and consider online acculturation and enculturation and offline acculturation and enculturation? Now, acculturation is the term which defines to adapt to the culture of the dominant culture and social setting. So in this sense, I would question sometimes myself. I am Turkish by heritage, born and raised in the Netherlands, lived and worked and studied for 9 years in Germany, and then moved to the UK. So am I acculturated or am I enculturated? Because enculturated is the notion that you try to learn about your heritage culture again. And what we see in the research we have considered for the past 3 years, also together with Professor Yogesh and Professor Rana, and I would like to mention Dr. Ahmad Jamal from the Cardiff University, we have found that immigrants do not acculturate fully, but they also do not enculturate fully. And when I look at the perspective paper, the topics are touched upon, but I think we need to find out more how this is shaping the identity of the individuals in those communities as mentioned, what it does to the identity formation, and mainly online acculturation. When we think about digital acculturation, it actually goes beyond the 2 cultures of home or heritage. We can see that not only the home and the heritage is influencing us, but also other cultures, because social media and digital marketing take the time and the geographic location away. There is no difference if I am now in the Netherlands. By the way, due to Corona, I'm in the Netherlands. And at the same time, I can chat with some of you from Toronto, as I heard this more earlier, but even India. So social media makes the world a little bit smaller, but at the same time, I do not lose my cultural identity, either based on being Dutch or either based on being Turkish. So as a final, because I'm sensitive of time, There are some opportunities I think we can consider, and there is a very nice paper published in 2019, again in IGIM, International Journal of Information Management, where we mainly focused on consumer acculturation influenced by social media marketing. Happy to discuss more. I think I have my 7 minutes, Professor. I can continue if you want me to.
We would absolutely love to continue. We would love you to continue, but we are conscious of time. Thank you so much.
I would like to add one final note. All the papers we have published in the past 3 years, that language, socialization, but mainly also friendships. So the peers you contact with in communities or even on the social networking sites, also touched upon in this paper, are all of influence how we as individuals also in a group setting behave. So I think the unit of analysis of individual versus group becomes a key issue as well. And as mentioned by some of the authors, I think we should consider also developing more solid scales to capture what is happening on social media. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. And you brought such a useful and an important new concept in front of us, acculturation. And I could just simply, if I asked you to share your story across countries, you could immediately jump into my class in cross-cultural management. Thank you so much for those valuable insights. We now move over to our next speaker for the session, Dr. Anjala Krishan, Professor of Marketing and Director of MBA Programs from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Casino City, the US. And it's early morning, about 8:30. I've had the pleasure and privilege of visiting your brilliant city, Dr. Anjala. Welcome to the session. And we can hear you loud and clear. And over to you for your session. If you would like to share your slide deck and get started.
Let's do that. Okay. Hopefully you can see my slides. Starting at the beginning. Everything good?
You're good to
Everybody
go.
okay? Okay. I know that we're in a hurry. I've put the time on. Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Krishan. I'm over here in the United States in Las Vegas. I love the last talk. So interesting. Without further ado, I've been working on and off with Dr. Dwivedi for years, I think. And we never wrote a piece together or anything. So this has been really fun. And I'm so excited to meet all of you. I'm just going to read right off of my slide here. I just co-edited a book called Marketing and Humanity last year. And so I'm just going to read what humanity is. It's not simply defined as a collection of human beings. It's actually characterized by the enactment of compassion, sympathy, generosity, kindness, and benevolence. And I think a lot of the conversations we've been having today have been centering on this theme. And that's the fun thing about our conversation. So maybe there's a part 2 to this book that includes all of you. And so with that, I just wanted to talk about 3 propositions that I think fit together quite well with some of the ideas in the book and some of the ideas that I've just been doing in general in my research. And the first one is how does digital, digital is basically a platform, right? But we all know that it's essentially upended everything we've ever known. It's essentially changed the entire game. And so we want to say, oh, it's just a platform, but it's not. It's not. It's changed the way we live. And so it is a two-way exchange in terms of the way the media itself has had an impact on us. So the first proposition I had in the small piece that I wrote for our paper was that I don't know what happened. Okay, sorry, I got unmuted. So the first one is as seekers of capital. We behave as seekers of capital. So what are we doing constantly? And I think we've heard about some of this in our talks today. We're looking for reviews. We're reading reviews. We are constantly finding information, looking for ways to essentially interact with digital media. And so that's the first way. And in this process, essentially in the process of seeking capital, we're going to have both pluses and minuses. And so that's the first thing. There's gets and gives. On the one hand, it can enable mental health issues, loneliness, other things. because we are less likely to meet people face to face. Yet on the other hand, we have mindful consumption apps and things that can help us with our mental health. So we have this kind of paradoxical relationship as seekers. The second proposition that I put together was that we are also, in addition to seeking capital, we're encountering change, agency, and empowerment. So essentially, they provide us platforms through which we can cross boundaries. First, as empowered agents seeking to collaborate, like we are now. Second, as data-driven decision makers enabling transparency. So that comes down to Google Scholar. Simple ways that we can get online, we can find out people's current publications. We're able to, and when you're tenure track, keep track of what you're doing, and everything's transparent. It's a lot harder to hide information when you have these platforms. And then the third one is a social change, humanitarian, spreading knowledge through voices. I like to bring in the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, any of these movements that have essentially upended again the way we behave. They provide platforms for us as humans in physical space to get together, but digital space is enabling that. And so, and we have to admit to that, right? These hashtags allow us to come together and to communicate and enact change. And so these are three ways. The third proposition, and you'll be happy to know that I'm timing myself, so I'm keeping track, is that these platforms have the potential to go further. So we say we're seekers, we are potentially enacting as agents. And the third one is being creative. And I brought in a couple of new pieces, relatively new pieces here, but essentially, how do you create capital? And we know that this happened prior to digital media, but certainly digital media has allowed us to have a much faster communication of our capital. We're able to create this capital. It goes online virtually much more seamlessly, and more people can get to this capital. And so I like to read, creativity is not limited to written knowledge. It spans products and services that can be self-created. So the entire do-it-yourself movement. And this can eventually bring us to a greater level of mindful consumption. And also, through transformational leadership, so in this case, Yogesh, we can bring people together. We can create cognitive diversity. Look at all of us on this team, completely different backgrounds, completely different cultural orientations, and yet we're able to bring something creative to the table. And so that is something that certainly digital and social media marketing can enable. And with that, I want to bring in this picture, kind of my ending to this quick 5 to 7 minutes. And what I did with this picture, and I'm sorry, I'm a picture person. So I wanted to kind of say that at the bottom, we have kind of this watching, seeing, and consuming. That's where we are with proposition 1. Towards the middle, we are social change agents. We're intersectional, diverse, and inclusive. We're mindful, happy, and social. And at the top, we're transformational leaders. We're knowledge creators. And, is there necessarily a hierarchy there? Potentially there is. To be a transformational leader or knowledge creator, you likely have to go through some steps. And so you can go from watching, seeing, and consuming, but you can also go all the way to doing, being, and creating. And so with no further ado, I think that brings us right at the right time. So thank you so much for this opportunity. A big thanks to Yogesh and all of his team, and so nice to meet all of you.
Wonderful insights, Dr. Angela. And for all the platitudes and the plaudits we keep giving digital and social media, I absolutely enjoyed the term that you used. It's upended our lives. So yes. Kicking, screaming, willing or unwilling, it is here to stay. And yes. Our lives have changed forever. It's almost like saying today is the first day of the rest of our lives. So
That's
thank you so much for those insights.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I'm sure your students go away with a lot more retention than any other professors because of the pictures that you use. It's a great pedagogic tool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's time for us to now move to our next speaker for the session. So may I invite Dr. Emmanuel Mogaji, lecturer in advertising and marketing communications, University of Greenwich, UK. Dr. Emmanuel?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I assume you cannot hear me and you can see my screen.
Yes, we can hear you and see you and your screen. You're good to go, sir. Thank you.
That's fine. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity to share this perspective that I've got. And Thank you to the attendees, I guess, around the world, those who have had to wake up early to engage with us, and also the many presenters. It's a pleasure to be here to share this platform with you. So I guess in the few minutes I've got, I just need to really highlight three perspectives that I think it's, after reading the paper, that I think is one of those propositions for digital media. And firstly, yes. So I guess my first point is actually the idea that it's more than just social media, because I think often the focus seems to be on the end part, which is the whole idea of social media, which is also still a subset of the whole essence of digital media. So while we acknowledge that, yes, social media is important, but I think there is much more. I think I would also like to align with what Professor Varsha has talked about regarding the extent of which media can actually go. So again, try to recognize that now we've even got smart speakers, we've got smart TV that can even have a better insight into what we do, which can then be used to complement perhaps what we have on social media. So for example, let's say Netflix can actually know what you're watching, even though you are not on Facebook. So because they can actually use those information to track and to measure, perhaps, let's say the #1 trending film in UK, they push it out to everybody. So I think in moving on, yes, we need to recognize that, yes, the traditional media that we used to know, I think they're also coming on board to recognize the fact that they can complement this digital effect into it to make it even a better platform to complement our marketing strategy. And also going about the idea of prospective undergraduate dissertations. I think this is an area that can also be explored. Like, yes, how about billboards with beacons, location-based advertisement, which is not really social media, but is still part of this whole idea of digital media. But also, I think we need to recognize the ethical and data implications, which are still relevant, irrespective of the media in which you're exploring. Could it be digital? Could it be the whole small field of social media? Could it be Facebook? So I guess we still need to recognize the fact that, yes, digital, the ethical and the data implications are very, very important. So secondly, I also want to address the whole idea of sentiment analysis, because I think with social media, there's a lot of big data coming on board. And also with the prospect of AI, with machine learning and natural language processing, it's easy for us to process and analyze sentiments in text, in tweet, and also social media content. But also I want to go with what Dr. Atis said about the culture. So for example, you might tweet something that you think is interesting, but perhaps the machine might have a different understanding of it, because what we found to be positive might be different across different cultures. And I think that's why it's important for us to consider a qualitative approach to sentiment analysis, not just scraping tweets and putting it in the machine to give us positive, negative, or neutral sentiment, but really try to understand what people are talking about in those tweets, what people are talking about in those comments. I know that will be very hard to do, but I think it's important for us to understand the sentiment beyond just what machine has analyzed for us. So again, that's just one of those things I'm proposing, that yes, sentiment analysis in social media is important, and we've got the machine learning to help us to make it faster, to scrape a lot of data. But I believe there's still limitations with the classifications, the language processing, which might arise to the need for extracting qualitative insight from those sentiment analysis. So while watching the time, I think I will go to my third point, which is about the ethics in data collection. I got this word from the paper about the weaponized art technology. And I think Professor Dr. Jenna has also talked about it. So I think it's important for us to recognize that, yes, while the data is available, while it's out there for us to use, how have we been using it? Also, the point is we need to recognize our position within this whole spectrum. So I might be a marketer, I might not have the ability to design an algorithm to extract data. But I think irrespective of our position within the cycle, either as users, either as academics, or either as marketers, or even as, let's say, developers, we should be able to ask ourselves the questions and probe ourselves and challenge ourselves, okay? If a developer is bringing something for me to use in my company as a marketer, do I need to ask the question, how are you getting this information? How are we making sure this information is right for us to use? Or am I just keeping quiet about that, thinking all I want to get is insight about my customers? So I think we need to raise that question. And also the idea about the quality and the quantity of information being collected. How much information do we actually need? Do I need to give information about my DNA to get something that will be good for me in terms of my food? So I think those are the things that we also need to consider, that yes, you want to collect information, you want to give out information, but to what extent are we collecting this? The fact that the consumers has clicked that they have accepted the terms and conditions, does that give the brand the explicit right to collect as much as possible? Because they will say, come on, you've told us to collect this information. An example I will give is maybe on gambling website or payday loans, whereby people have said, I need this information. You submitted your data, but you don't know how those data are being used. How can you control it? So I think the ethics is very important. And lastly, I would suggest, how about a shorter version of terms and conditions, perhaps an abridged version? So instead of us just going through 10,000 words of terms and conditions whereby we might not read, or just go to the end and click it, could there be a shorter version that explicitly presents what this is going to do? So again, I'm sure there's going to be many speakers to talk on this, but these are just my three perspectives so far. So firstly, digital social media. Secondly, sentiment analysis, and also ethics in data collection. So again, thank you so much for this. It's been nice sharing this platform with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Emmanuel, and thank you so much for keeping to our time. I do realize time is short, and we have 5 more speakers to hear from, their insights. And currently the chat window is disabled, but we shall open up the chat for questions after we hear from all of our speakers. With that, let me invite Dr. Mohammad Rahman. Dr. Mohammad is Associate Professor of Marketing at Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania in the US. Good morning, Dr. Rahman. We can see your slide deck. We can hear and see you clearly. You're good to go.
That's good. Thank you, Professor Sandeep Bhattacharya. I really appreciate hosting that event. I also would like to thank SIBM Pune and Swansea University, and mostly I want to thank Professor Yogesh Dwivedi for organizing this opportunity for multiple speakers from around the world to input their future ideas about research proposals and propositions. A little bit about my background. Some of the speakers provided very good understanding of what's happening in a digital and social media. My research focus is actually on customer engagement and customer experience in mostly farm-hosted online communities. This is what me works with Dr. Jamie Carlson from University of Newcastle. My research expands beyond United States. I lived and worked in China for 3 years before I came to United States, and I also worked and did my PhD in Australia. So I had a multicultural, multi-ethnics, as Atis was talking about earlier. I was born in Bangladesh. I studied in US. I studied in Australia, worked in Australia, USA. So I have do multiple different culture experiments. Similarly, my children, they're multi-ethnic children. Okay, so they're also learning a lot of different things. So it is becoming a more multicultural, multi-ethnic aspects of things, and it's very good. And I also wanted to say that in digital marketing, I learn from my children as much as I do from my research as well. So this is one of the things I want to focus on, is about looking at from a marketer's perspective, practitioner perspectives. When you do research, we always think about how it's helping accumulating knowledge, contributing academic knowledge. But when this proposal came out, I was like, okay, I need to see what marketers need to do, because I feel like they're really struggling, especially when it comes to content and digital marketing. As I said here, lots and lots of users. So because of digital and because of the mobile, there's so many people online every day. And I think we see a slide earlier in the 60 seconds, how many people watching videos and all those different things. Another problem is with the marketer is not generating enough ROI. Now, if you're a big company like Apple, Amazon, you have a lot of money to spend and you're being able to well-known brand. But I'm looking at for more smaller marketers, medium-sized marketers who are trying to compete. Now, you're not only competing in your local or national level anymore, you're competing in a global level, okay? So building the trust to your brand and engaging your consumers to your brand is really important. So what marketers can do, we need to provide metrics and skills and recipes to marketers that what they could implement and being able to apply. Because as I was saying, right now, right this moment, we have about 400, 500 people listening to this webinar. But what we're doing multitasking. We have our phone on the side, or iPad on the side, we are doing screen maybe. So what I say, we are doing multi-screen multitasking. So our consumers are doing the same, just like us at this moment, what we are doing, okay? And so what's happening, there's high quality of media, but there's a less quality of time we have. So marketers' job in more and more becoming complicated. Now, how you can find your consumers, engage those consumers to your brand, build trust towards your brand, and which at the end of the day would provide return on investment on your marketing. So on the next time, what I was going to focus on is the impact of digital content marketing on customer journey. As a marketer, traditional media or digital media, we are focused as a marketer, focused on moving our customers through this journey, through the awareness. This is where huge impact digital content marketing is, okay? Now, we don't get word of mouth from our friends or families, but we get it from YouTube. We get it from Facebook or Twitter or something like that with a brand, okay? Ads, print and radio, those are traditional medias there, of course, but digital media add on top of that. So marketer jobs become more and more complicated. So when consumers are going through the consideration age, that's also a huge presence of digital content. Now, you just cannot have your website. You have to have a YouTube channel, you have to have Instagram. So all sort of different things. Marketers becoming stretched in a lot of different areas. So, and consumers have a lot of different options. So when you're moving them, consumers from awareness to consideration, when finally they purchase your products, the store purchase or online purchase, okay? Or nowadays, more and more is app purchase. Now, most of the times I purchase my products through app, Amazon or any other Nordstrom apps or any other app that I use. But the other crucial aspects of digital content marketing is advocacy stage. This is where consumers become your advocates, your fan, your influencers. And YouTube is a great example. Okay, I do studies in a digital video games, and my kids play video games and they watch YouTube channels, like so many different, and how many subscribers you have. So think about it. If your video games makes a product, they have to have those influencer advocates talking about your product, moving customers to building the trust with your brand, building that engagement with your brand, not only on the game platform, but outside the game platform, which eventually gonna bring to the loyalty. So in this customer journey aspect, so there's three things, very crucial things that are important. First is the increased customer knowledge when it comes to the awareness and consideration age. So this is where marketing is about listening, not about shouting. You need to listen to the consumers, what they would want to see, what they want to hear, what they want to purchase. The second stage is ability to optimize customer experience. because all of us looking for a better experience. When we are deciding to purchase a product, when we are purchasing a product, we're talking about a product, we want a positive experience. Then the last one is extend the value of your marketing effort. But digital helps to extend your efforts by beyond marketing communications in the traditional and all others. So when I was looking through all those aspects of digital and consumer experience, okay, thank you. So one of the things I had a lot of propositions and questions for it. That's one of the things is that how we can help marketers to develop their expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. Okay, we need to develop skills and tools for the marketers so they can utilize it. Other thing is that how do customers frame and evaluate the digital content experience? What do they expect from DCM marketers? That's very crucial. So the marketers can use this tool to develop content which is going to fit to their particular industry. Another important aspect is think human. So we have to think about what we like to do when we are going online, okay? How we are interacting, what your audience wants, what they know, how they found you in online. Why are they on your Facebook page? Why are you on your Twitter page? Why they are following you? And last is the Google and SEO. The Google is changing dramatically every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, okay? Search engine optimization changed so much. So we got to figure out how we can help those marketers when Google is changing and what they need to do from that perspective. The last is the most important things, what I think from marketers is know, how does DCM that is relevant, personalized, and is speaking to goals, needs, and pains of desired customers to build trust and engagement. That's what the customers are looking for. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak about my research and the future direction. Thank you, Professor Sandeep.
Thank you, Professor Mohammad Rahman. Thank you for those insights. And you spoke about customer experience, which is so relevant to all of the young marketeers out there. Great, wonderful insights. And let's now move on to our next speaker for our session. I have the pleasure of inviting Professor Nipendra Rana, Professor in Digital Marketing, University of Bradford. Professor Rana, we can see your screen, but we cannot see you. So I think you need to switch on your camera.
Okay,
great. We can see you and hear you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya.
If you can just put your slideshow.
Okay, yeah, all right. Is this okay?
Perfect, sir.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, once again. And thank you very much to the organizing team, Professor Yogesh and Professor Raman, for organizing such a wonderful webinar on digital and social media marketing. As Hatice has said, I also worked. I got the opportunity to work with Professor Yogesh, and in fact, I'm one of his PhD students as well. So currently, after working there, studying means I did my MBA and PhD, and after working more than 5 years at Swansea University, I'm currently working as professor in digital marketing at the University of Bradford. I'm really thankful to all the speakers who have covered, massive, aspects of digital and social media. I will touch base upon some of the very generic aspects related to digital and social media marketing. And as the other speakers, were talking, just Mohammed and Emmanuel, about the digital and social media marketing and its, a huge number of users who are available on the digital and social media marketing, that makes it more attractive and a massive source not only for marketers to attract customers, but also the researchers to find what are the difficulties being faced by the marketers and consumers, and try and align with the existing research gaps which are available in this area, and try and do research. So as you can see, as per the recent statistics, 4.57 billion people are active internet users, out of which 3.8 billion of them are active social media users. That itself, says a lot about the perspective of digital and social media marketing going forward, and it's already ongoing. Why it is so important? Because it allows companies to achieve the marketing objectives at low cost. Because whatever companies, the marketers want to reach out to the customer, they can do it instantly without any delay. The social media platforms such as Facebook, which has more than 50 million registered businesses, provide opportunity to customers to explore whatever they want, whatever brand, whatever product, services they want. They can do it without spending much time in exploring for the products and services of their choice. Over 88% of businesses use Twitter for their marketing purposes. That makes the marketers' point of view about the social and digital media marketing also very clear, that they want to engage with certain social media channels, and they try and attract as many customers as possible. It has a number of different benefits as well for the marketers. It enables them to connect with their consumers, improve awareness of their brands. That is what one of the key aspects of marketing, whether you do it traditional way of marketing or through the digital and social media way of marketing. It influences consumer attitude. It helps marketers to receive feedback, whether in terms of negative electronic word of mouth or positive, very quickly. It helps to improve the current products and services for the companies, and eventually increase sales, which is the ultimate goal of any marketing campaign. So we know that it has the huge potential to provide the benefits both to the marketers, companies, as well as consumers, but it has a lot of challenges as well. As you can see, the consumer complaint, particularly the negative electronic word of mouth, could be conveyed very quickly to millions of other consumers, and that can affect the company's image negatively. Again, developing an effective social media strategy and particularly tracking the return on investment is something which is, the marketers are still struggling to know about through the various social media platforms. So that is something which is of interest to the marketers. So from the perspective of marketers and companies, that is something that needs further exploration. Adopting a unique platform-specific approach. Actually, it is very difficult for marketers to create a content which is applicable to a particular platform as well as to the other platforms. So they always wonder about what different content can be created. Getting to know about your audience is something which is also, again, challenging, because this is for marketers to know how and what number of customers they can get from the other social media channels. Managing and growing your community. So lack of interaction. It is not that you just post your advert on the social media platform and you look for, thank you, so these are all the challenges. In terms of research gaps, from the theory, and again, it has been taken from Professor Dwivedi's recent work, majority of the studies are using Twitter and Facebook. So, there is a need of how other social media platforms could be looked for understanding the consumer's behavior, particularly from the marketer's point of view. Difficulty in measuring social media consumption behavior. More studies on needed on AI, relationship between social media marketing agencies and clients and customer, effect on mobile marketing and brand communication. These are the future research based on the gaps that are emerging from the theory as well as from the experts' opinion. And this is a list of all different areas where young researchers can start thinking of. So it starts with the variations of consumer behavior across different platforms, how positive or negative electronic word of mouth communication travel across the social network, the use of social media across different countries, the relevance of augmented reality in driving the risks and fears, and how that can help customers to adopt a particular social media platform. Effect of the social media marketing activities on proficiency and managerial achievement. So these future research are basically based on the theoretical gaps which are available as well as the expert's opinion. So the key thing that is emerging out of it, that it is a very interesting area of research. It is all about how are we killing two birds with one stone. So we are doing research considering the challenges which marketers are experiencing, as well as understanding the gaps which are emerging through the theoretical research. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Professor Rana. Like any professor, I'm sure all of us would love to share all our insights, and I'm conscious of the fact that time is short. So I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
Thank you.
But we have huge constraints of time. Thank you for your insights. May I now invite our next speaker, Dr. Sanchayan Sengupta, Assistant Professor of Marketing, ESCA School of Management, France. Dr. Sanchayan, are you online?
Yes, I'm trying to upload my slides.
Yes, we can see your screen. We can see your screen. If you could, that's right, slide view, wonderful. You're good to go, Dr. Sanchayan, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya, for the introduction. And thank you very much, Professor Dwivedi, for inviting me to this wonderful seminar and for organizing this, as well as thank you to Professor Raman as well. It's been a great organization, and the seminar has been really great so far. So I'm Sanchayan. I'm a marketing faculty at ESCA in Paris, France. So I looked at the paper and I looked at the topics which I think are, let's say, all the top topics were very important. The ones that are kind of very close to my current research, I'd like to sort of briefly use my time to discuss about that. And also towards the later half of my talk, I will focus on what probably could be given more focus in the current that's a current scenario and the years going forward. So I looked at the electronic word of mouth, which some of the previous speakers as well looked at it, and they also discussed that. So to add to the current discussion, of course, we all know it's very important for both researchers and managers to understand both the positive and the negative implications. Now, in the paper which we are currently discussing, the 2020 paper of Dwivedi et al. So they looked at, of course, the OCRs, the online consumer reviews, how it impacts consumer perception of trust and mistrust. However, I think that's very important, but I think it's another part also which is also looked at is how do you leverage social media to understand consumer behavior. And there, I think my current research looks at social media complaining. So it kind of ties well to what has been discussed, and probably I think I can probably discuss more about that. So as we probably know that social media has kind of transformed how companies communicate with their customers and prospects all over the world. So the two major platforms for customers to lodge complaints is Twitter and Facebook, and there are other platforms as well, but these are probably the most widely used, and they are used all over the world. Not just in the Western developed countries, but I think all over the world. And the trend in the last 5 years is actually growing. So more and more people, more and more consumers are going online and posting complaints. And if they're not able to get through the companies directly, they're also trying to sort of share their negative experiences on social media. so that other consumers can be aware, even if they don't get a solution to their problem, at least other consumers can sort of get to know their situation and probably suggest some solutions. So all this negative electronic word of mouth is, of course, has a very negative consequence for the firms in terms of, as we know, reputation, purchase intentions, brand loyalty, trust. Now, the paper talks about that the propensity, of course, to share negative as compared to positive word of mouth is much higher. So as consumer psychology has shown us that it's always negative events in an individual's life, whether it's a negative social encounter or service encounter, that people tend to share more. So they also talk about how you can investigate in-group versus out-group members, and I think that is pretty interesting. So there could be research, either conduct a social network analysis or probably an experimental or a quasi-experimental design, where we see how in-group versus out-group members are able to share their negative experiences. So the proposition, I agree to that, and I think it's pretty interesting for researchers to look into that and probably have some empirical data to sort of validate that. So as we can see that it's to enforce social norms. A lot of users on social media, they try to see how negative word of mouth could lead to not only giving some kind of altruistic punishment. So if a consumer has a negative experiences with, let's say, a service provider, he or she would like to share it and let everybody know that this is something which needs to be known to everyone so that a social kind of a stability can be enforced. And I would also like to focus on the fact that there are, of course, the differences between culture, how different cultures and countries react to social media complaining. And this is where I kind of try to come up with 4 different points with respect to social media complaining. So I feel that the personal characteristics and the cultural orientation is very important. Yes, so I'll just finish very quickly. It's very important to look at when we come on social media complaining, because managers still lack an understanding to how to handle complaints. So a lot of research has been there that when customers complain for any service, let's say in a restaurant setting, they're aware that how other customers around them react to that. I think it's also important to look at the virtual presence of other customers, which we also call as bystanders. So whether it is, if I'm complaining on Facebook, I know that other customers are there, they can share my comment, like my comment, or post a positive and negative comment. So how that reflects on me as a complainant and how my interaction with the service provider affects the other customers around me, customers or prospects, the spillover effects. I think that is also pretty important. Now, this could also be looked at cultural as well as on the personality level as well. So we have the big 5 model of personality. We have the different variables like self-esteem and narcissism. And as I was saying earlier, there's a tendency to vent complaints by consumers. So not just have a solution to their problem, but just to publicize their complaints. So if and how managers, so do managers need to respond to that indirect complaints? And if they need to do, how do they do that? So I think those probably issues are pretty important and they can be looked at. So thank you very much for this webinar. So I conclude that. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchayan. And it's very interesting about the aspect that you referred to. There may be many companies who do not actually respond, but the moment it goes on social media, the fear of negative publicity possibly forces them to respond, giving a tremendously powerful tool in the hands of the consumer. Thank you for those insights.
Thank you.
Most welcome, sir. We now would like to invite our penultimate speaker for our session, Dr. Tek Ming Tan, Assistant Professor of Marketing, Oulu Business School, University of Oulu, from the wonderful country of Finland.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Santi. So is it okay right now? Can you see my slide? Is it everything?
You're good to go.
On track?
Everything is clear.
Yeah. First and foremost, thanks to Professor Yogesh and also Dr. Raman for all the good organizations. And also, I would like to thank to Professor Yalisalo for the recommendations to recommend me for this webinar, because he is in holiday right now. So he also part of the papers, the nice, excellent paper that you guys wrote together. So today we are, I actually myself is Terence, so I'm an assistant professor from Oulu Business School as introduced. So currently I'm doing blockchain-based kind of a research that related to marketing. Actually, quite strange is that is it blockchain is a hype or is something already with us? So this is the question I think. When I talk about blockchain rights to all the people, most of the people, even for those blockchain researchers in our school, which is from the IT or engineering place, or even I talk to some people, when I say my background is marketing, so the first question is that they ask about whether it's relevant or not relevant at this moment. So the thing is that I feel that marketing is very relevant to all the context, especially I think in technology, new technology. So I believe that we play a big role in these blockchains. So the second thing is that when we look at in EU right now, I think it is not something like people think like 10 years only will come. Blockchain, I believe that we believe, actually me and Yalis also believe that it is coming, because the Liechtenstein blockchain has already approved in early of this year. It means that people can form all these legalized entity in this Liechtenstein, which is nearby the Germany and also Switzerland. So they can actually use this status and also expand their business across the Europe. So basically, even I think you heard about this Libra. Libra actually registered a company in the Switzerland. So I think in Europe, especially this blockchain belief is coming. So if you look at, if you check the current blockchain-based social media, there are a lot are coming. Even though they are not in the, like, people are using it quite a lot, but a lot of early adopters they are started using. Example like similar to Reddit, like Social X is coming, but not sure whether they are going to be the biggest in the world, but always come the new one. Then after that, it will replaced by another new player, just like MySpace is replaced by this Facebook. So I think before I move forward, what's going to happen is it's good to know that what is so different between the current situation, which is like Facebook, Google, or Twitter, what's the difference compared to the blockchain. So the first thing first is about the database. So in this Facebook, you all know that they are centralized, but blockchain is decentralized, distributed server. So I think today a lot of people talk about privacy, talk about trust, talk about authenticity. So those are the things from the blockchains, we believe that it could be solved. Okay. It also the one of the difference here, main difference is a lot of censorship in the current like Facebook censor, but in blockchains, basically the censorship, people are not happy about that. So another important point I would like to highlight is the self-governance. So for blockchains, a lot of self-governance, but for this current state, it's not self-governance. We as a user, we don't have the rights to do a lot of things. Even our data, the photo that we post, everything we have post in the online is not belongs to us. We are just communicate to the online community. We don't own much things. Let's say we talk about, I'm a YouTuber. I post a video. Basically, I replicate my creations on YouTube, and somebody else can actually just download and repost in other platforms. Just like, let's say we talk about in Youku in China, or maybe other social media platform. They can download from YouTube, then they repost again in other place or in Facebook. So now there's a thing that we see there is a big shift. It could be people moving to the digital mindset. The real digital mindset here means that people have a fully control about their their contributions on the online. Example, let's say whatever things that they post, let's say their behavioral data. So we have the rights to control so that we know what going with ourselves. I think right now Facebook know us more than what we know ourselves. Let's say we are a heavy user of Facebook. So also talking about digital identity management. So to what extent that we ourselves now can manage our own identity, it's not depends on the third-party platform. All these things may change because we have a lot of control about our own stuff. When we have a lot of control, means consumer themselves have to be accountable or responsible for all their data. So they might think twice before they post, or if they want to share, they want to know about what are the incentives they will get. It's not just selling the data, then Facebook can do the Facebook marketing. So now they share the data to the company, and the company can actually give them back some incentive or discount. So now I think when we do some literature reviews about paper, we found that people still use about this traditional model, which is TAM, TRI, TBB. Okay, you count to test the adoption. So our question is that whether is it a good model to do it, or shall we create a new validity scale? Because through the papers 3.2.1 highlight that it's a lack of validated skills. So I think this is the time that we need to create a new skill, just not just using or combining different models or theories. Yeah, I think now we have a very new way of doing our digital asset management. So thank you so much. I think time is almost there. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Tek Ming Tan, for your insights and also to keeping to time. You brought to the fore blockchain, which is such an integral part of IT going forward. And it envisions a tremendous amount of security. So we shall see how things proceed forward, interspersed with our day-to-day lives. Thank you so much once again. We now have the pleasure of inviting Dr. Laurie Hughes. Dr. Laurie Hughes is a lecturer in Strategic Operations, School of Management, Swansea University, UK. Dr. Laurie, we can see your slide deck, and we probably can see your desktop, but we are yet to see you.
Oh, that's curious because I can see myself. So let's double check why that would be.
Great. We can see you, hear you, and your slide deck. Oops, you disappeared. You came back again. You're back online. All good. All good.
Excellent. There we are. Okay, fabulous. Thank you very much, everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. I can see my picture there is my pre-COVID haircut, so I'm a bit different at the moment. So my role for the paper has been mainly to work with my colleague Ellie from Bradford University, and also with Professor Dwivedi, obviously, for putting together some of the key themes for the paper, developing the introduction and some of the common themes for the discussion elements of the paper. And what I'm trying to do here for my 7 minutes, I'm going to click my timer, is to just talk about just 3 main elements of themes that have been part of many of the different contributions for the paper itself. And the first one is the, there we are, is the perspectives on AI and different sort of associated technologies. And I think we all understand that AI is here among us, and I think that we appreciate that consumers very much are used to some level of interaction with bots as some part of their customer journey. And we've also got the rise of voice and smart speakers, and these are taking a big, larger presence in our homes. My 87-year-old mother-in-law has a smart speaker where she puts the music on and even buys things. As long as she's got her false teeth in, then Alexa can understand what she is saying. And I wonder how far we are away from voice-based background noise being used by marketers. As long as we give away this technology with incentives, and that being used by AI systems to better understand some of our potential purchasing habits or some of the wider aspects to our purchasing intentions. The power of CGI influencers, and it's a funny concept here, and I spent some time just doing some background research for my little talk today. The concept of Lil Miquela, who's got 2.6 million Instagram followers, and Blauka, 155 followers. These are AI-based influencers, but people interact with them as if they are real people. So Lil Miquela recently split up with a real human boyfriend. And people, I think, very quickly seem to ignore the fact that these are CGI-based influencers. And I think that it's a worrying, perhaps an ethical trend for future marketers. So AI generated content, perhaps the blurring reality is a factor for us, and the trust in influencers is also an issue for us. And key things for marketers here, understanding how AI technology can be an integral element of our marketing strategy, and perhaps looking at some of the ethical impacts and influence of AI. And the second thing I pulled out from some of the perspectives in the paper, and perhaps going off in a slightly different direction, is ecosystems. Now, I suspect that Zuckerberg would like us to stay within his own ecosystem as much as he possibly can make us. And that means that we perhaps may purchase items within Facebook without having to go off into different areas. If you're clicking on some kind of advert, sticking within that particular platform is perhaps where people like Zuckerberg would like us to stay. And there are ethical implications to that, obviously. As marketers, we need to understand a lot more about the journey our customers take and which platforms that they end up going through to get to where we want to be engaged with them. And the key thing that as marketers we've got to keep focusing on is as our target market moves across various platforms, we need to make sure we go with them. And if we are looking at Gen Z as being our target group, our target customers, we've got to make sure, obviously, that we go to the platforms where they are currently engaging to present our offerings to them. And we can't ignore the rise of TikTok. I spent 1.5 hours on TikTok yesterday when I was in Croatia, and just for research for today, and it went in 5 minutes. I think we've got to recognize the potential of these new platforms and think about ways to use them for our benefit. The rise of dark social, I don't mean the dark side of social media, I mean the engagement via private groups where we can choose more closely our friends. And I think as marketers, we have to think more clearly about how we engage in more interesting or relevant content to be able to leverage the dark social. So impact for marketers here with this particular perspective, thinking about diffusion of innovation, obviously moving towards new platforms can be quite scary or whatever else, but we've got to think about how to perhaps be one of the first people there, or at least look at that as a new platform for us. Looking at consumption habits and the impact of these ecosystems, and also perhaps looking to the east a bit more on what's coming our way, and the use of TikTok and perhaps the implication of the potential bans within India and in the US perhaps need to be thought through as well. And the other one I picked out here, and it was mentioned by Dr. Krishna, I think it was, earlier on, about mental health issues and digital wellness. And I think these are being talked about more now. And I think as marketers, we can't ignore them. Social media addiction, hashtag digital detox, these are all things that are gaining more engagement, really. And at last, Facebook starting to look at perhaps more enforcement of some of the toxic elements, certainly in the US, of some of the postings. And I think that there are solutions out there. Wobot is one that I've been recently engaging with. And it's quite interesting, you soon forget, going back to the CGI element, that there are no real people behind it, but they are very interactive. And again, it's interesting how they can be used by marketers. So we need to develop engagement strategies to meet these evolving attitudes. So perhaps, questioning about our marketing offering. Does it make things better in terms of digital wellness, or is it making things worse? Can we perhaps filter out the toxicity and engage with customers in a better way, and look at the longer term impacts from marketers' perspectives on how we can factor wellness in? And I picked this little thing with pigs in the bottom here. I thought it was quite interesting, and I find it quite interesting how people can perhaps latch on to certain trends. This particular one is walking with pigs. I did it myself a while ago, and I find it quite good that people looked at this particular trend and thought, okay, let's people take time out of the digital world and walk with pigs. Bizarre as it sounds, I did it myself, as I say, and it was a fabulous experience. And I think that looking at innovative ways where we can help with the solution, not be part of the problem, is quite useful.
Dr. Hughes, we are running out of time.
There we are. Thank you. That's it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And you mentioned one very, very interesting aspect in your entire talk about the grandmother test. And that is so often so useful for marketeers, that if your product or your service can actually pass that grandmother test, you probably have a winner on your hands. Very, very interesting that you brought in that element over and beyond the subject content that was the focus of today's webinar. So thank you for your inputs. If I can now request all our speakers to switch on their videos, because we will now open up on chat and take questions from our participants. We've got a few hundred participants. The last time I counted, it was like 300 on Zoom and about another 300 or 400 on YouTube streaming. So we have one of the first questions, which is asking about the role of the government to regulate social media in terms of social media privacy. Would any of our panelists like to have a crack at it? Professor Yogesh, are you there online?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Professor Bhattacharya.
Would you like to comment upon the role of government in ensuring or regulating social media?
Well, I mean, I think some of our speakers very clearly outlined the kind of paradox between privacy and personalization, and also the privacy and security of citizens. So, for example, in last 3-4 months, many governments have implemented systems to track their citizens due to COVID-related issues. So, the government has role to play, and at certain extent, sometimes they encroach the privacy, but mainly, I mean, majority of places, it's not everywhere, majority of places for citizens' good, for their safety and security. So I guess I can comment on this, but I think there are few people who has raised this issue, including Brendan and Hajar and I think Jenna. So if they can comment on this particular issue, then that will be great. And Annabelle, obviously. Yeah.
Yes, if I may, one of the big challenges on this aspect is that we have a lot of platforms, but few of them are overpowering the market, and they have a big share. And actually, there are a lot of movements at the moment. We know that, for example, TikTok is having a huge adoption at the moment. is becoming one of the big platforms for social media. And we have heard recently about Microsoft trying to buy that one. We know that Facebook has a huge number of users, but they own as well. Facebook owns WhatsApp and they own also Instagram, meaning they really are capturing huge number of social media participants and users. So one of the problems is that the government can start, and actually they have started looking very closely about the power that big companies are having. Just a few weeks ago, we heard that all the big top IT companies facing the court in the United States about how they are doing this monopoly of industries, Google, Apple, Facebook, etc. So that is one of the things that government is doing, trying to prevent that monopoly. But also GDPR and data regulations are also helping to highlight these issues. And in the opposite way, we have governments that are having a completely different approach. And we can see in China, for example, that we have these mega apps that consolidate all the things that you are doing in social media with multiple platforms. They have it in just one platform. And even more impactful is their social credit score, that actually they are using this data from different sources in order to determine what is a good or bad behavior from citizens. So yes, there is a huge impact on how we are doing, how these social media platforms are integrating, not only within the social media environment, but with the rest of the digital marketing channels and government. So,
thank you, Dr. Annabelle. Thank you. If I can go to Dr. Brendan next with a slightly different question. So we have a student from our Innovation and Entrepreneurship MBA program, Dr. Brendan, whose name is Parth Arora. And he has a startup, and the question he's asking is, how do we take social media to the small and medium businesses who suffer from lack of funding, lack of awareness? How do we actually take digital marketing and social media to this class of companies?
Well, I was jumping in to answer the previous question, but I'm sure I can offer some insights with that. Well, maybe I can try and kill two birds with one stone, as was mentioned by one of the previous speakers. For a small to medium-sized enterprise starting out with a zero digital footprint, I'd suggest that YouTube might become their best friend. They might look up a number of different tutorials to try and get a basic grounding and an understanding. But as was mentioned by the discussion on blockchain, a pertinent question should be is whether it fits. Before a small to medium-sized enterprise should engage in any of this, they need to think about the fit with their organization, the fit with their strategic objectives and the aims of what they're trying to do. If it's simply just to have a Facebook page for the sake of having one, then you probably don't need one. However, if your customers are there and if it can be offered as a platform to engage, to have conversations and to drive brand awareness, then that's certainly a good reason. When starting out, I would say another suggestion would be to have a lot of content prepared well in advance, something like up to 6 to 12 months of content, because nobody wants to sign up to a Facebook page or a Twitter account that is blank or is empty. So make sure that you have a strategic approach to communication set out in motion. Let me think what else. Another thing I would do would be I'm Irish, I'm in the west of Ireland at the moment, obviously in lockdown, but I would do something we call an MOT test, which is where you have to check how roadworthy your vehicle is every year. Continually do an MOT on your digital footprint to see how your digital automobile is running. And the best way to do that is to get a good understanding of metrics, of KPIs, and set out a KPI which really identifies, is this digital automobile working well? Are we actually talking to people, or do we have 3,000 bots from Sri Lanka signed up to our Twitter account and not one of them is going to sell anything? Arguably, we need 10 followers who will buy something versus 1,000 followers who do absolutely nothing. So that would be kind of an introductory beginning. And then I could see another hand going up. Maybe the final point I'd make is in relation to the previous question about governance and regulation. Don't forget that there is internal governance and regulation. So the infamous Google algorithm change, something which I've just published something on recently in the Journal of Digital and Social Media Marketing, where we looked at the impact of algorithm changes from a search engine optimization agency, and it was catastrophic. Penguin was the big update. Obviously, these updates that Google release are given lovely, nice, fluffy titles that are related to the lovely animals that are nice and cute, but they're not. They're anything but. They're some of the most evil beasts that are out there. You're talking about companies that small to medium-sized enterprises who would have a reasonable ranking, a page one ranking for their specific brand terms, and then Penguin came along and blew them out of the water. They disappeared. Commercial suicide, not to be on to be ranking on page one on Google. So don't forget that there is internal regulation within each digital platform. Facebook obviously has their own one. Sorry, yeah, that's just to follow on about the governance. So you not only have governments regulating, you also have the digital platforms self-policing as well.
Sure.
Evilly, I might add, not fairly.
Right. We could see Dr. Mohammed putting up his hand. Would you like to add any points?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sandeep. Thank you, Brendan, for pointing out. One of the suggestions I have for small to medium-sized enterprises who doesn't have a lot of resources is that think small, focus on your very niche customers, okay? Build from that small customer. Don't try to go for a big email is a very good strategy for small companies, okay? Getting this email information, personalized emails to start off with. You know, if you try to go big, you're probably not going to be able to, as Brendan says, you cannot have 6 months content. You don't have the resources. If you can do it, that's great. But most individual enterprises don't have that. So start small and identify your fans, identify your followers, identify your loyal customers, and focus on them and try to grow from that. And eventually, you're going to be able to grow.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So here's a question which is right up the street of Dr. Jenna. So we have a question where one of our young MBA students is asking, to what extent does the culture of the country affect the openness to provide personal data for social media marketing? Over to you, Dr. Jenna.
It's a great question, and I think that there's a growing need for research that looks at these cross-cultural perspectives. I was actually involved in a webinar and group earlier on this summer that's trying to specifically get at this, because my understanding of privacy or even the ethics sitting in Canada is very different than somebody than you perhaps sitting in India. And in fact, in a previous paper, we looked at this idea of social media comfort, and we did a comparison directly between the US and India to try and identify what are traditionally seen as individualist cultures versus more collectivist cultures. And what we found more broadly, perhaps of interest to this audience, is that generally our Indian participants were more willing to share their data and had lower privacy concerns than people in the US had. And then that raises really interesting questions about, even just how questions are phrased. Do we mean the same thing when we're talking about privacy? Do we have the same understanding of how our data can be used? Is it just that we consent to having personalized ads, or do we understand that information could then be compounded with other types of information and used in the future for any number of different reasons? So those cross-cultural understandings are really important, and also having that situated knowledge, having people in those specific countries, researchers in different countries, to understand that we're not, while social media is global and transcends borders, our understandings is actually very individual and personalized, perhaps to the country or even cultural level.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Dr. Varsha, if we could request you for your inputs. So we have a question from Karan Khatri, who's from our MBA first year program. The question he's asking is, what role do browsers like Chrome, Firefox, or Safari play in the entire ecosystem in terms of influencing digital and social media research?
So I think this is a great question because I think depending upon the browser, there's a lot of data which get translated into the cookies, and that's how the brands are able to track it. But I would suggest that I was discussing about the personalization of the data and data-driven marketing, and I think Jenna spoke about the privacy issue. So some of the work that we have done, what we have found is it's also the browser that is connected with an individual, and it is also the kind of data which you share on that browser. At what particular instant, how do you contextualize that data, and how that behavioral tracking is being done. So all these parameters, so primarily the external parameter and internal parameter, which is includes at the technology interface as well as the individual interface, aligns together to bring it up to that particular level of the marketer, and then probably they might use it. And that is how the permission-based marketing is applicable here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Varsha. We have now a very interesting question from one of our students, Naman Kasliwal, who's asking, how will 5G change the digital and social media marketing in coming years? And if I can direct this to Dr. Tek Ming Tan, who's sitting in the country which gave birth to Nokia. Sorry to put you on the spot, Tek Ming, but if you can take that question.
Yeah, I think 5G is also one of the flagship project of our University of Oulu. So so basically, I'm not closely related to this 5G, but we have been discussing a lot about how it's actually changed. The thing is that because right now what we have this handphone, right? We still need something to process on our phone, but there are not much thing can be done because there's a limited processing. When the 5G come out, it means that it could be very fast. Everywhere you move, right, it can be processing like very fast, in the sense that a lot of personalization can be done, like already as explained by Professor Varsha. So I think the personalization is one thing is very important, and also the AI, it can be implemented very fast. So it means that basically next time, let's say 5G is coming for social media, in the sense that they can precisely know what you want before you move to the restaurants. It means that let's say you have this handphone, because let's say you talk about like people from China. I think I know a lot of Chinese students as well as my friend from China and Malaysians. So I know a lot of people like from India, from Singapore. So I try to understand how different between the social media. I think in China, they use a lot of apps on ordering their food. So I think they also use QR code to scan. But I think I can feel that next time is much more different, in the sense that before you go there, you already have all the information on your phone, and you can customize a lot of things. I think this is one thing about 5G that we have been discussed here.
Indeed, indeed. And we don't know what we are signing off the moment we install some of these apps. We don't know what T's and C's apply. We don't know what we've signed up to. Sometimes the thoughts are frightening. Dr. Angela, if I could direct the next question to you. So Sharath from our first year MBA is from SIBM Pune is asking a question. In today's world, with focus of big digital companies and scrutiny over their misuse of personal data, how do companies prove their credibility and convince us as customers to part with our personal data?
Ooh. You asked me a tough one. I have done some work on privacy. I didn't really get in the details of some of my digital work, but I've done some work on privacy, and also actually EWAM. I have a fairly new JBR with EWAM. And so there's a couple of things that I thought of when I saw that question. There's some individual differences that come into play. Some people are more likely to disclose personal information than others. So that's just an individual differences variable. But then there's also specific situational factors that play into that decision to share information. But I'm working with a group, a transformative consumer research group, and we've been looking at, unfortunately, the downside of social media and digital marketing in terms of privacy and some of these issues. And I think it brings up some of the other issues we've been talking about, is that there are very few players that have a lot of space in this in digital media. And so what happens is those players can share information across their platforms of the same users. So it's more like buyer beware at this point. I think that we rely a lot. Sorry?
Caveat emptor.
Yes, yes, yes. And the vulnerable consumers are unfortunately that's the most difficult situation, is the consumers who are most vulnerable. But I think we're relying on ethics. I go back to some of the other speakers. We're relying on the business, the actual brands to display ethical behavior and not share information illegally and things like that. I don't know if any of you use a Garmin product. I have a Garmin watch. I don't know if you're aware of what recently happened with Garmin. They shut down, for 3 days. What was it? 3 days, 72 hours. Their entire business was shut down, all due to hacking. So these kinds of things happen. We, at this point, those of us, I guess Brendan and I, we don't know where our data is. Everybody knows how many miles I run, but I don't care. But it's one of those things where I think it's the information you have and then what you're willing to share. But I do think we sometimes blow the privacy issues a little bit out of whack. I think we need to take a step back sometimes and think about it a little bit harder, as long as we can separate kind of the degree of risk. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Angela. You know, very often whenever I attend these very interesting webinars, I internally think we should have one webinar for the webinar, and then we should have another webinar to take all the questions, because we always end up not having enough time for questions. And sometimes as professors and academics, that makes me wonder, can we become even more centric? Yes, Professor Hajar, you have a point to add. Please go ahead. You need to unmute and speak.
I just wanted to add something. Yes, I just wanted to add something about the privacy issues, which are actually due to GDPR. For example, it is, this topic and this issue is only addressed from a law perspective, from regulatory perspective. But ethics is not only about law; it's about norms also. And it is, I think the whole idea is not to have a law against companies or against brands, but it is to take into consideration people and have consider education, making people more conscious about how they could handle their data. Because many people are in terms of privacy calculus, are when you ask people if they are if they care about their data, they say yes, and I don't know what they are doing with our data. But at the same time, they go on social media and they are like telling their whole life with photos, etc. And especially the younger generation, who need to be more conscious about what they are doing with their data, because it's not only something that is imposed to them, and people are not, and companies are not stealing their data; they are given their data by themselves. So it's it's a very complex topic, and it's not only about law and GDPR. So so this is why it's so important to go on and work on these research topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Professor Yogesh, if I can credit you, you started this all with your brilliant article, of course, with the help of all our co-authors on the discussion. Any last thoughts that you would like to share before we close our session today?
I mean, rather than last thought, I saw a question from one of your MBA students that what are the negative aspects of digital and social media marketing? And I think we should share, experts should share some of their thoughts, but I just would like to say there are several actually issues. If you're talking about social media marketing, the biggest problem is ROI. I mean, we talk about metrics, that's fine, but exactly calculating what we are actually spending and then what we are getting back. We can calculate what we are spending, but what we are getting back is very difficult, because at the moment we are focusing on engagement and those kind of things, and those cannot be given value directly. So that's one thing. Also, the thing is that, as we know that positive words spread slowly than the negative words. Yeah, and on social media, obviously, as much as people talk positively about brand, I think the much more they talk about negative. Any dissatisfaction, immediately they go and they put it on social media. So how to manage that without effective tools, resources, especially for going to small and medium enterprises. I mean, they don't have that level of infrastructure. And if they go to multiple platforms, they cannot manage it. And this is why one thing I wanted to add into that particular instance about SMEs, that not only focus on metrics and things, but also think about carefully where your followers are, which platform. Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? Is it LinkedIn? Or is it somewhere else? Focusing on all platforms, probably you would actually spread yourself too thinly to actually do a good job. And it will do then more damage than actually the benefit. So this is just my thought about that. But I will obviously invite my colleagues, experts, to just add 1 or 2 points, whatever they have on this particular thing.
Sure. Thank you.
I think Muhammad was, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Hughes. I just want to say one thing about a negative electronic word of mouth. One of the questions Kapla asked and what Professor Hughes was talking about it. Negative word of mouth could be a gold mine as well, because it's a customer feedback. Even though it's a negative, but it's customers giving you a chance to fix it, get it better. Because if you do that, you actually establish stronger trust, okay? And you have a more loyal customer. So negative words, yeah, it might be it's faster spread, but if you do action properly, that might have a positive impact on ROI. What's the main reason for investing all this money in digital marketing and not being able to calculate what the gain is?
Very nice, very nice. Objection handling. I'm a sales and marketing professional, and objection handling. Yes, Dr. Rana.
Negative word of mouth, comments are often spread by discontented customers. So the main thing I would suggest, and I was just reading through that question as well, is to compile your customer complaints and see if there is a pattern. Do you have a problem with a particular product or a service, or could a disgruntled employee be the cause of that problem? So the best way is to find out is to ask customers what they think about your business. And that's why in one of my points, I also said that it's very important for you to have one-to-one connection, because there are, massive information which are floating around, and, customers are, really overburdened most of the time looking at those information, that those information sometimes bother them as well. So it's very important how, closely you are, talking, having conversation with your customer to try and avoid that situation. And, you also need to plan ahead, have emergency plans in place if such situation occurs. And if you encourage an open relationship with your customers, you will likely be able to head off problems before that happens. So, yeah, it's all about customer relationship management, managing it electronically, and how effectively you manage it, and take it positively. Even if it is electronic word of mouth, you take it positively, see the pattern, see your weaknesses, and try and solve it in time.
Sure.
So,
thank you. Dr. Angela, do you want to jump in and add to that?
Yeah, just a real quick comment. I agree. It is a really good set of information, and we can then look for patterns and categories. The other thing I wanted to add, I don't know how many of you have heard of the Dell Hell case. I like to use it in class. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's a great example. And what Dell did was they did an ideation platform. And so to your point, so the way to kind of turn this back, I always tell students, don't find problems and solutions, find solutions to problems. So if you then say, okay, I see the issue, I see what you're saying, I agree with you, how should we solve this? So when you put the solution back to the consumer, and a lot of companies do that, now the consumer's kind of stuck with, oh, I want free stuff. You know what? You getting free things are not going to fix my issue. Clearly your problem was beyond getting a free product. And so a lot of times I think some of the customers that are handling negative word of mouth well, turn the solution back to the customer and give them a platform to then suggest solutions and then categorize these solutions and then respond. So it's about that kind of cycle of taking that negative word of mouth, getting that input back from the customer, and then showing them how you then use that input. And that's the way it kind of works. And so it's the same way you work with your children or anybody else who's complaining. I see the issue here. How do you want me to solve it? Because we're in the middle of nowhere and there's no food. So if you're hungry right now, so
we are beyond our scheduled time for our webinar. So I just would like to ask Dr. Raman whether he wants to share any last thoughts. Dr. Raman, would you like to share your thoughts?
Well, it was a great, interesting session. When I started, I told it's going to be a lot of value add and knowledge for all the participants there, and I'm sure that has happened. And as rightly told, I think we need to have a webinar exclusively for the Q&A session. I mean, I opened a link and I got 25 questions there in the Google form, and plus there are so many questions popping up there as well. It was a fabulous session. This picture that you see at the back is my campus. I wish next time we should have it at Pune. And I will be glad hosting all of you here in Pune at our campus at Lovely. Well, it was a fabulous session, and I am glad that all of you could take out time. Some of you, it's morning. For some, it's possibly late night, and some of you, it's evening. It was an excellent value add. We are not able to answer all the questions there, but I would urge all participants to download that link which was posted by Professor Sandeep. I think it will be fabulous if you're going to download and read and possibly connect up with the respective profs who are, author of those specific sections, and they'll be more than happy to answer your questions. That's it from my end. Professor Sandeep, thank you. You have been an excellent anchoring this right from 5:30. It's 8 o'clock now in India here, and it's been fantastic. And thanks once again to Professor Yogesh, who was the brain behind the entire thing here right now. And I think it's excellent that he made this happen and gave this opportunity to SIBM Pune to host it along with Swansea. Thank you, Professor Yogesh Dwivedi, for giving this opportunity. That's it from my end, Professor Sandeep. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one last sentence to add, which is that any researchers and student researchers who heard this, they have tremendous ammunition for more than a score of research papers. Sometimes we struggle to arrive at, so what should I be researching on? I think there's tremendous material available, tremendous thoughts. And like you rightly said, sir, it would be very good for them to connect one-on-one. Social media is all pervasive. There's LinkedIn, there's ResearchGate, there's all kinds of methods to connect up. So thank you very much, Dr. Laurie, Dr. Hatis, Dr. Tekming Tan, Dr. Sanchayan Sengupta, Dr. Mohammad Rahman, Dr. Nipendra Rana, Dr. Hajar Kefi, Professor Varsha Jain, Dr. Angela, Dr. Brendan, Dr. Jenna, Dr. Annabelle, and most of all, Dr. Yogesh Dwivedi, the champion of our show today. Thank you very much for your very wonderful insights. And it was an absolute pleasure. So have a good day, a good evening, or a good night, depending on where you are. With that, I shall close today's webinar. It was wonderful meeting all of you. We look forward to staying connected. Thanks to social media.
Just one thing, Professor Bhattacharya.
Please.
I just also wanted to say a big thank you to audience for being here, for listening us. Otherwise, no point to discuss. So big thank you to audience. And if you have any feedback or suggestion for future webinars, please do pass on to either Professor Sandeep Bhattacharya or Professor Raman, because that will help as we are planning again to do something in near future. So your feedback and suggestion will be really appreciated. Thank you very much. And thank you all speakers. You've been wonderful, great, both in your talk as well as in your obviously responses to audience. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Rajesh, you can stop the live stream. Rajesh, you can stop.
Okay, sir. Okay.